420 in baseball is really weird right now. The Oakland Athletics have more runs than everybody. Owen Miller is leading the league in batting average, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are still a baseball team. Arm, Leighton, Peter Apple, this is the Wednesday episode of the Just Baseball Show. What's going on, man? What's the weirdest baseball thing that you've seen so far that makes you realize, wow, it's so early and everyone freaking out about their teams needs to take a chill pill?
Well, wait, so they didn't relegate the D-backs yet to AAA?
D-backs are still a baseball team. That felt crazy to me.
I mean, no, it's funny because when we were talking about like, what are we going to get into today? Everything that I was looking at the numbers, looking at the standings, I'm like, it's too early to talk about so much of that in terms of like what it actually means or what anything could mean. Like you said, Owen Miller's like pacing Major League Baseball. What I will say though, that is absolutely insane is, and this is probably more sustainable, Jose Ramirez, dude. What he's doing is insane. He's hitting for power. He's hitting for average. And I think he's striking out only 5% of the time. That was one of the most amazing things I've seen so far is the 5% K rate from a guy that we talk about being in a lineup where no one wants to pitch to you. No one wants to pitch to J-Ram in that Guardians lineup. And he is still putting up video game numbers. Obviously he'll slow down a little bit. But the weirdest wacky thing I think was the Philadelphia Phillies putting up one run in Colorado. I know you picked the Rockies. I tailed that. I liked that pick too yesterday, but like, come on. There's no way even you thought the Phillies were scoring one run at Coors Field. Like,
are you kidding me? I knew Chad Kuhl would throw 6 scoreless innings. What do you mean? Chad Kuhl? Of course Chad Kuhl would do that. No, I didn't expect that at all. That is wacky because you would think an offense like the Phillies would come into Colorado first game in the thin air and absolutely demolish. But the reason we took Rocky's money line is because when you're going from a hot, muggy Miami, 4 games, don't get an off day, then you go straight to Colorado with Aaron Nola, who the curveball's not going to move as much in Colorado. We know all that, but that's not important. What is important, of course, is that we hit Rocky's money line plus 150. But what's more important is today is the mailbag. We went to Twitter. We asked you guys to ask us questions on our Twitter at JustBBMedia. And we really wanted to focus on Twitter because our Twitter, now led by our guy, Ethan Badowski, is absolutely humming. We're coming out with 30 to 50 different highlights every single day across the league, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, whenever the games start, to 1 a.m. with our Good Night Baseball tweet. So these are all from our Twitter arm. We just got to shout out Ethan for a second.
Oh yeah. I mean, Ethan's been awesome. It's funny because I'll try to jump in and fill in when I think he's not available to put up a highlight, and I go to post it and it's already up. So like Ethan Badowski's been on it. He loves it. And honestly, I know there's other accounts that are frequently tweeting highlights, but Ethan, I don't think misses a single thing. So it's definitely worth following on Just BB Media. Not only is it like the highlights, the big plays, the big home runs, but also, like Marlins players running into each other. You get everything. So very excited about that side of things. And it's a great way where if you're like on the road or you're out or you can't keep up with all the games, just keep up with the Just Baseball feed. You're not going to miss a single notable play or big home run from the night.
You certainly won't. But so let's start with our first question. And our first question is less about baseball and more about us. And I was really happy to see this question come across our Twitter at JustBBMedia. Number 1, how did the trio of Peter, Jack, and Aram meet and decide to create Just Baseball? I know you guys have told the story briefly in a pod episode, but would be fun to hear the full rundown. That was asked by @Dom Foley on Twitter, our guy Dom. Aram, would you like to start? Or because it really started during COVID, and what I remember is I was working for the New York Yankees and I was trying to sell season tickets in a pandemic. Your minor league job got taken away due to the pandemic because they just didn't have a minor league season. Yeah. So I'm sitting here waking up at 5:35 in the morning, working on East Coast time in California, trying to make sales calls that go nowhere because you can't sell season tickets in a pandemic. So I'm calling Aram and I'm saying, dude, we can really create a baseball media company. And we thought about the website. But I'll throw it over to you because that's kind of where the website was really the birth child, which then grew to everything else.
Yeah. Well, what's funny too is I think the best way to encapsulate it is we were 2 guys trying to work in baseball who couldn't because the world was halted. So as a result, like we can't go look for other jobs. We can't go do anything. Like, so we're just kind of seeing things through, and we just created our own baseball jobs. And honestly, I don't think it was something out of the gate that you and I thought would be a full-time gig at first, right? Like I was still pursuing broadcasting gigs. You were still doing, whatever you wanted to do as well, and working hard. Like I remember when you came and you were working and making calls 24/7 and selling. And I'm like, how are we going to do all this? But it was really just for us to like dip our toes. I knew I was going to be going from team to team. You knew that you weren't going to be able to do as much baseball commentary, I feel like. So it was an opportunity for us to kind of just get experience, put our work somewhere, and see where it goes. It just went so fast from there. And I think that's what really floored us is, you start going on TikTok and that explodes. The podcast we post, I think it started 3 times a week, and just that slowly started to grow. And then the website, like we were using a rinky dink WordPress site, and then we partnered with Den of Geek, who took a basic site and really turned it into what is an insanely comprehensive and amazing website. Combine all of that, we kind of put our heads together at that point, and we're like, wait, we can turn this into a baseball media company. Because I remember you called me and you're like, do you want to turn this thing into a business? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is a fun media thing that we're doing, and it's a cool place to put work. And if we can make a few bucks on the side, we can. But then when the word business came across, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And you and I went all in. And I think the big thing on it, what really propelled us into this, was that you and I had so many conversations about where baseball was lacking in the coverage. And every time we had one of those conversations, we're like, can we do something about this? And I think we still have those conversations. I know we still have those conversations, but that was the basis of everything, right? It was like you and I talking. And then, of course, getting Jack in the fold was incredible. Remember, you and I were together when we called Jack, and we're like, hey, you want to do this thing? And he was on board. But it really was just conversations of what do we feel like is missing and how can we satisfy that? And I'm just so glad that everybody else kind of felt the same way, or at least it seems so in the early going.
I called you on the phone and we were talking over and over and over again. And I said, the way baseball is lacking is there is not one website or one media company that covers everything about baseball. There's the great big outlets like the MLBs and the ESPNs. And we've heard all the different stuff about how there's sometimes their baseball stuff is lacking. And then you have other more niche websites that are more stat based, or you have specific gambling companies or specific trading card or fantasy. Why don't we wrap that all into one website? We do the Just Baseball Show podcast. That'll be the flagship where we're doing it 5 days a week. And then I'll just jump on TikTok, because I saw that during the pandemic, this app is dominating screen time. It is the ultimate outlet to get your content in front of new people. So I said, I'm going to start jumping on TikTok. And you're like, TikTok? You mean the dancing app? And we're going to talk baseball? Like, good luck with that. Let's build up our Twitter and our Instagram, because those are coming. I'm like, trust me, TikTok is going to be huge.
I definitely liked it, because like after a little bit, I was looking at it and I'm like, I'm seeing all these people just grow so quick. And that was without a doubt a huge growth engine. But I think what it all boils down to is we found something that we loved. We found a way to do it differently, right? Like you can't reinvent the wheel. Like we're not going to change anything. But I think it's just finding the void and filling it. And I'm glad people have been receptive to it. And I mean, we're not even a year really of fully doing this thing. And to be where we are, I'm extremely grateful to all the folks that are asking questions. And thanks for asking about the story. Like we'll one day sit down and like flesh out the whole story. Maybe I'll even write it up or something, because there's just so many like wrinkles to it and so many wild things that happened and still happen. But yeah, it's been just a dream come true. And when you enjoy what you do and you enjoy who you do it with, it's pretty easy. And I think that's really what it boils down to for us. So
I got to say, I do enjoy talking to you and Jack, and the way that we met, just to wrap up on this, taking you all the way back. Jack was actually probably my second or third friend at Syracuse. We met on the second day of college, and we just watched baseball all freshman year. Then I met Aram when we all joined our fraternity. Well, Jack actually wasn't in our fraternity, but that's where Aram and I met. We met when Aram was rushing and we were just talking baseball like the whole time. Like we weren't even like talking about the house. I could care less. I was like, finally, like someone who's cool and knows more about baseball, or at least the same. It was like the back and forth was excellent. Then Aram and I joined, and we were friends ever since. And then Jack and I and Aram, all of us stayed in touch. Aram and Jack were Newhouse communications people at Syracuse while I was sport management, but we were all friends. And then afterwards, I was like, talking with Aram, I was like, we're going to start the Just Baseball show. Like, who's the perfect person to do it? Jack McMullen was the perfect person to do it. And now we're here.
The voice of an angel, the most polished guy on earth. It's wonderful. So yeah.
And now we're here and we get to do it all with our best friends. But let's talk some baseball. Into question number 2. Give us your all MLB no batting gloves team. Can include some recently retired players, asked by Real Eli on Twitter. That's Eli Sussman, correct?
Yes.
Our guy, Eli.
The man, the myth, the legend. It's crazy. I just met Eli for the first time in person, like not long ago, over at spring training. I hadn't seen Eli because we just worked. I'd done it remotely for so long. So it was great seeing you, Eli, and you're killing it over at Fish Stripes. Any Marlins content, anything you guys want Marlins related, definitely go check out fishstripes.com, because Eli comes up with clever stuff like this. And you put together some of the no batting gloves team. So you want me to go through the infield, then you go through the outfield, because the infield has maybe three of my favorite players.
Sure, go ahead.
Brad Miller at first base, probably my favorite player in Major League Baseball. He just rakes, and no one respects him. Joey Wendell is the definition of underrated, I think. Grinder, defender, does it all. Louis Guillorme is a local guy. I played him in high school. And I mean, it was one of those where it was like, you just assumed he was getting a hit and hoped it was a single. Like you were not getting him out. And he's kind of the same way. He'll foul 50 pitches off and grab more dirt. He's insane defensively. So I love him. And then Matt Carpenter, at his peak, really freaking good. Our third baseman's a little washed, unfortunately, but we don't have another hot corner, no gloves guy, unfortunately.
And in our outfield, none other than Trent Grisham in center. Ever heard of him? One of the, I was going to give him a huge compliment, but he's
good.
He's good. I thought he would.
I thought he'd take that leap. I thought
he'd take that leap too, but this is not what it's about. And it's about our left fielder, Will Myers, who has decided he's not going to take any leaps anytime soon.
I love Myers.
I do too.
He's like one of the more OG no batting glove guys, at least like in our lifetime. Like
when I was putting together this list, he was the first name I put down. It's like, well, Will Myers invented not wearing batting gloves, even though that doesn't make any sense because he hasn't been doing it way longer than he has.
Vladdy Senior.
But I decided that the only. Well, and then also to round out the outfield and right field, we have Kyle Tucker, who's probably the best overall player on this team.
Yeah.
But to round out the team, I picked my favorite non-batting glove wearer who's recently retired. Quite honestly, I don't know what he's doing right now, but I hope he's doing well. And that's Evan Gattis, because Evan Gattis raked for a time in baseball.
Yeah,
he's fun to watch. Huge. He looks like a bigger version of Darren Ruff. Love Evan Gattis.
Yeah, great story too. I mean, he was someone that was out of baseball, and I believe he was like a ski lift attendant, and then got back into baseball and made his way onto a big league team. So super cool story there. What's funny is it's almost comical how every single one of these guys, aside from like, I would even say Grisham's a grinder. Every single guy that is a no batting gloves dude is a freaking grinder. Like, it's not even, you don't even have to like do mental gymnastics.
Will Myers a grinder?
No. Will Myers probably not a grinder. That's probably the only guy. I would say everybody else is like a grinder. Brad Miller, play the game hard.
Brad Miller's the definition of grinder. Joey Wendell's another definition of grinder. And Matt Carpenter invented the word grinder.
And Guillorme, I think, is in that boat too.
I agree. Let's go to number 3. This is more baseball talk now. We're getting straight to it. What do you think of Jared Kelenic heating up? I think he's been seeing the ball really well since the White Sox series. And why do you think Julio Rodriguez is getting screwed by umpires so far this year at just _Lions? I'm going to answer the Julio Rodriguez stuff quickly. He's a taller guy. Judge has been dealing with it for years now. It's the low strike. I actually I know what he's talking about. I was watching a Mariners game recently.
It was the Codify clip, right?
Yeah, and Julio Rodriguez was getting screwed, but you're not getting screwed to the sense where you're striking out 40% of the time. He's just not ready, Arm, and that's okay because he's only had about 30 games above high A, and he's still so young. He's my favorite prospect in baseball, but that doesn't mean that he's going to have the best rookie year this year. Anything to add about Julio Rodriguez before you talk about Kelenic?
What's crazy to me, though, is how he's in the 99th percentile in sprint speed.
He's a freak of nature, Arm.
But but nobody, not one, you will not find one scouting write-up anywhere that gives Julio Rodriguez plus speed.
Except just baseball.com. Top 100's coming soon.
I might need to tweak it to 60. It's out by the time people are listening to this, actually.
Top 100 people. Top 100 MLB prospects on just baseball.com. Go gobble up all that content.
Oh, 50,000 words. I'm like still fried as we talk here. But no, I think you hit the point, right? Julio Rodriguez just wasn't ready. I don't think he is ready for big league action at this point. Only playing 30, 40 games above high A. His season was kind of split up last year, went and played in the Olympics, which is sporadic competition as well. I mean, the power is crazy. He's put some good swings on balls, but the approach is just not quite there. His pitch rack isn't quite there. He just needs more ABs. And he's also trying to learn center field on the fly, not learn, but get acclimated to big league center field on the fly. It's a lot. It's a lot. And look, if he gets sent down, it doesn't change anybody rational that does prospect analysis. It shouldn't change their outlook on him. He's going to be just fine. Look, like you said, he's a bigger guy. Also, Jeff Conine talks about this a lot. Rookies at times, just you're not going to get the borderline calls as much. It's just kind of how it goes. Umpires are weird like that. And I mean, look, he's not the first guy to go through this. He could be hitting better with or without the calls. And that's kind of what's holding him back. Kelenic, real quick to get onto him. I like what I'm seeing from him. I tweeted a video a couple days ago of a swing he put on a ball. It was a change up tailing away, down and away. And he went down and got it and drove it into the left center gap. Also hard 90, stretches it into a hustle double pop-up slide, which I love from Kelenic. But he's seeing the ball better. He's letting it travel. He's using the whole field. He's a guy that likes to get a little bit pull happy. When he's using the whole field, he looks good, and he's starting to do that again. I think he's breaking out of it. He's a streaky hitter, and he's young.
I'm kind of souring on him.
Really?
Not to the sense where I'm like, oh yeah, bust, like he's bad. I just don't think that he's going to be this multiple time All-Star. I think he's going to be an above average outfielder. And first of all, the glove is not very good. Like, let's just get that out of the way early.
In a corner, I think it's fine.
It's fine, but it's fine in a corner. He was coming up. We were thinking that he could play center.
Yeah, I didn't love that.
Yeah, no, and that's not a you thing. I'm just saying that's the general vibe around Kelenic. Was he's such a good athlete. He's playing a corner, but you can move him to center because he's so good. No, he's a fine corner. So all right, let's get that straight away. He's a fine corner outfielder defensively. Hitting, he's whiffing a lot.
Yeah,
he's chasing a lot. He's not taking his walks, and he has a really hard hit ball at 114. So you see the potential pop. But 9th percentile of average exit velocity right now. He has 4 hits.
Yeah,
no, he has 5 hits.
5 hits
in 29 at bats, 552 OPS, and 27th percentile in sprint speed. He's not running really either.
Yeah, I don't think he's had too many opportunities to burn it down.
That's a really good point, though.
But it's funny, like that is crazy. I think he's normally in the 60th percentile, 70th percentile range, but so one interesting pushback there, what you hit on was one thing I was going to say is the zone whiff is a little bit concerning,
right?
But the approach is all right. Like he's not chasing as much as you think. He is still walking some. It's the zone whiff that is concerning me. But I think he's starting to settle in. But I do agree. I'm not sure he's going to be this perennial all-star. I think he's going to be a really darn good hitter that's going to hit 30 plus homers. That's going to have some swing and miss. And I think where the scouting grades may have been a bit off was the hit tool. I don't think anyone's denying the power, but this was somebody that I think people were very confidently saying had a plus hit tool. And I think we're looking at more of a 260, 270 hitter than like a 280, 310 hitter that some people thought he could be.
This is what I was thinking. This is going to be Jared Kelenich's like best seasons. I think he's going to be a 265 hitter who hits 25 home runs and steals 20 bases and is a fine defender in left.
So I think he's got 30 in the tank.
Maybe in his best years, but I don't think that we're going to see 30 year over year once he's like between 25 to 29, you know?
I still hold out the hope that he could be a 30 guy. But I do have that concern that he's more of the 270, 25 home run guy. Really, it's not a question of the power. It's a question of getting into the power. And we haven't seen him do that unless he goes to his pull side. So it's almost like you're selling out for power or you're kind of caught in between. And I could see him kind of going to be more of that complete hitter. And that could result in me being more 270, 25 homers. So it'll be interesting, but I mean, they need him. So it'll be interesting to see how Kelenic turns things around. He was phenomenal in the last month of last year. And maybe he's just a slow starter, but I'm not going to panic at all yet.
I'm not going to press the panic button. That's not what I was saying either. The more I watch Jared Kelenic, the more I don't think perennial all-star. I guess that's my point here. So let's answer, because we got about 5 to 6 Juan Soto questions. Just everyone's asking, should he get traded? Where? For what? Do the Nationals extend him? There's so many Juan Soto questions, so I just kind of combine them all in one, and it makes sense with the way we're talking about the Mariners and their outfield. So this is the question. If Juan Soto was traded, who is the most likely destination, and what would the package look like? Yeah, it's a tough question because, first of all, the only way he gets traded is if the package in return is the biggest package in a trade ever.
And he also would have to say, I'm not staying in Washington.
And
he'd have to literally say, I'm not signing an extension. I'm letting you know in advance so you can get something for me here. But here's the thing. There's only about 2, maybe 3 teams even capable. So this is more of just a thought exercise, because I agree. I don't think Soto's getting traded. I think they're going to find a way to pay him, and he's gonna stay in Washington. He seems like he's happy there, and he's not 40, right? Or he's not 30. He's so young. He's got plenty of time for them to build a contender, and it seems like he's fine with waiting it out. He already got his World Series victory, so I think he's fine to wait it out. I don't think they'll trade him, but for the sense of for the question, the only teams that I think can really trade for this guy are the Dodgers, the Guardians, the Mariners, and maybe, which it would never happen, maybe the Pirates, right? Like those Orioles are the only teams system-wise.
But they won't. Like Orioles and Pirates won't, but could technically.
They theoretically could, but they won't.
Here's a shocker team. Not going to do it. Yankees could do it.
The Yankees could put together a package. Yes, they could. If they put together a package of, like, obviously it's headlined by Volpe and then Peraza and then Dominguez. Like that's a trio of prospects that just no one's matching that. No, the only team that can match that's the Mariners. And then, like, if we're talking about rebuild, you got to put rebuilding teams in the wayside, right? Like the Orioles, they could trade Adley. They're not doing that. Yeah, I mean, the Yankees are in that conversation too, which is just insane, by the way.
I have a question. Volpe, Peraza, Dominguez, Waldichuk, Medina. Does that get it done?
Like theoretically, that should be able to get you anything in the world. So
right.
If there's a willingness for him to be traded, we're saying, right? Like if it's said Soto wants out of Washington, Washington is evaluating trades. Yes, that has to get it done.
And think about it. If you're wondering, hey, could my team possibly make a trade for Juan Soto? Take your 5 best prospects in your system and say, would you give all those guys up for Juan Soto? If you would, you could probably get the deal done. But if not, that's at the low end of what it's going to take. And those 5 prospects, they have to be within top 10 systems too. So if you are the Brewers or you are the White Sox, like nothing you could trade would get you Juan Soto. I guess the White Sox could trade Luis Robert and Michael Kopech like from their big
which would be like one step forward, one step back.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So that's where it is, at least for me. You have to have at least a top 10 system and then take your 5 best prospects, or maybe not 5, but 5 of the top 8 prospects in your top 10 system. That's what most likely it would take.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, because you got to think about when's the last time we've seen a star really traded like that. I look at like
Mookie
in
Betts.
terms of years of control though.
True. And
You know, so it's like Miguel Cabrera
Yeah.
is one of the only, and even that return, it would be way more
Marlins
expensive
did very well
nowadays.
on that return, right?
Yeah, they did great. I mean, they got 2 top 50 prospects and then another top 100, and like,
How'd they end up?
oh, they were great. Andrew Miller had a great career.
He did have a great career.
And
No,
Cameron
the Marlins,
Maven just
though.
retired.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, wait,
funny. I was actually
go over the players of that trade once again, because that's
okay.
what can happen if the national, like, can you imagine the national trade?
That's why it's almost never worth it. Cameron Maben, Andrew Miller, Burke Badenhop, Mike Rabello, and yeah, like some guy De Los Santos, and then one other dude. Burke Badenhop was the longest tenured Marlin from that deal.
The classic Burke Badenhop. Everyone's heard of him,
including
Hopper. Me. Like, I've definitely heard of him.
You've definitely heard of the Hopper, right?
No, actually.
He's a reliever. But yeah, that package was a nightmare. And that shows you, like, trading stars is, unless you really have to do it, it's risky. It's definitely risky.
It's risky. So let's move on to the next question. Number 5, is it too early, or should we be concerned with the lack of productivity the Red Sox offense is producing? I'll answer that. I'll give like my quick 2 cents and I'll throw it back over to you. No, like, relax. They're going to be totally fine. Rafael Devers is still crushing. Xander Bogaerts is still hitting well. The guys like Trevor Story, guys like Kike Hernandez, those are the guys who haven't really completely gotten going yet. But as we're recording right now, Aram, I'm bringing up the run scoring leaderboards. The Red Sox are second in the AL East, the best division in baseball, 1 run behind the Tampa Bay Rays at 45 runs. They would have more runs than basically everybody in the American League, except, the Guardians and the A's, who are in first, and then the Angels and the Rangers. But I mean, they're still one of the best offenses in the American League, and they haven't even fully gotten going yet. So no, I'm not even a little bit concerned.
Not even one bit. Pitching wise, that's a different conversation. I'm not worried about the offense. And Kike Hernandez is not going to hit 163. Trevor Story, whether you think he's going to be whatever version of Trevor Story he's going to be, I think the consensus is he'll be better than a 572 OPS Trevor Story. And then Bobby Dalbec's either going to get going or they're going to call up Tristan Casas. Either way, it'll be better. So I'm not worried about their offense whatsoever. They'll be just fine. And JD Martinez isn't really even getting going yet. He's always a bit of a slow starter. I think he'll start getting hot as well. This offense is loaded. They'll be just fine. There's no reason to worry about them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of reasons to worry about them.
Oh, yeah, the offense now.
But not the offense. Like, that's the one part with the Red Sox, at least, that as slow as you can start, it's going to be totally fine because the Red Sox are so good. And they're not even off to a slow start. Just look at the rest of the standings. Look at the rest of the standings. They're doing better than most teams. And they're scuffling.
Kind of down across baseball a little bit.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when the A's have the most runs scored in baseball, like, something's wrong. Something's happening. Also, I think we should address, because I came up really with conspiracy ball, that we were going to get this bouncy ball that we got maybe in 2019 when Gleyber Torres hit 38 home runs, that we were going to get that ball back and we were going to see an incredible amount of offense. That's not happened. Actually, Colby Olson, our analytics guy, looked into it. The drag is down. Home runs as a total are down. So I don't think we have a conspiracy ball, Arm. I think that conspiracy was, in fact, a conspiracy.
No, yeah, we're using socks, I think, out there again now. It's great. Yeah, no one wants offense, right? We'll see. They'll change the balls by month. Apparently, they were changing the baseballs by the time of game and whether it was nationally televised, which is still the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. So I'm sure they'll change it. I'm sure they will. And then we'll adjust accordingly. But yeah, I mean, the AL East is going to be a bloodbath. Everyone's going to hit. Even the Orioles will hit a little bit. So, like, I'm not worried about really any of those offenses at all.
Neither am I. Next question. Who should the Cardinals target when it comes to starting pitching? Asked by at Seth Partney on Twitter. So this question is really, who do we think is going to be available at the deadline? And it's a really, really hard question to answer, at least at this point. Like, what kind of teams do we think will be selling at the deadline? because we know that the Cardinals are going to need starting pitching, but the Cardinals aren't alone. So I really want to branch this question out to who do we think will be the guys at the deadline that are possibly getting dealt? At least we know that if Frankie Montas isn't dealt soon, he's going to be the number one guy. Well, maybe not the number one, but at least the consensus most tradable asset, I guess, for the starting pitching. Oakland A's are burning it down, and Frankie Montas is their best option. They already traded away Sean Manaea. Who else besides Frankie Montas do you see possibly being available at the deadline for the Cardinals and for other teams?
Man, that's a really good question, because it seems like a lot of the teams that are in good shape right now, obviously they're not trading from any of their pitching. And it's really early to see who the sellers are going to be. The D-backs, even like their long-term pieces, they want to hold. So like you see like the Merrill Kellys of the world, which I'm sure teams would be somewhat interested in. Like he's not going to go anywhere. A unique one though that I think is a guy that will probably end up being traded before people even really are clamoring for him is Zach Plesac, though. I think even if the Guardians are playing all right, I could still see them dealing Zach Plesac. They have so many guys in the minor leagues that are close to the big leagues. You'll see if you check out our top 100 list, we have several Guardians pitchers on that list and several that are close to the big leagues. I think Plesac is bouncing back a little bit this year. Some of the underlying metrics point towards him maybe being a little bit lucky through the first couple starts, but when you look at Plesac, he's never going to be an ace, right? He's never going to get enough swing and miss. So even if he's a solid middle back end of the rotation arm, teams like the Guardians are okay trading those guys because they know that they can pump out a million of them. I could see Zach Plesac being dealt. And then if Jordan Lyles is half decent, that's going to be one of the first dudes to go too, I feel like.
You know who's the guy on your team who I think is going to get dealt? Pablo Lopez. I think Pablo Lopez could get dealt.
I think they'd have to.
You guys need offense. For example, let's say Max Meyer comes up and Jesus Zardo is still shoving. And then you got Trevor Rogers and Sandy, and you got Eliezer at least giving you solid innings. Like that's plenty of pitching. So then if someone says, hey, Kim Nang, Arm Layton, the former Derek Jeter, what if we gave you a really good bat for Pablo Lopez? I mean, you got to consider it at some point.
Oh, for sure. I think if a big league bat is offered, the Marlins would listen on Pablo. But I think Eliezer Hernandez could be a guy that we see dealt too. And he looked good last start. If you put pieces together, a few good starts and Meyer gets called up, I think the Marlins would probably try to see what they could get for Eliezer. The only way I see Pablo traded is if it were for like an established big league bat. And I'm not sure the Marlins would roll the dice there now, but if there's one of the guys that's established in the rotation that would get dealt, it would probably be him. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do with Eliezer, because if he puts together a few good starts, it's going to be weird if they relegate him to the bullpen to call up Meyer. It's a little bit of an interesting spot. Another guy that I think could get dealt though is Zach Greinke. It's probably his last year. They're probably going to want to trade him to a contender if he wants to be traded. Who knows?
Probably doesn't.
Actually wants. Probably doesn't. He hasn't been good really, or that great through the first couple outings. He's been lucky, but he's been good enough.
Counts.
Yeah, it counts. It counts. He's been good enough, right? So there's a team that's going to want a veteran. He put together really good start in that last outing in the postseason for the Astros. I'd imagine Zach Greinke will get dealt because it looks like the Royals are kind of free falling a little bit.
Another guy, we're talking about the Diamondbacks. Is Zach Gallen getting traded or what? Because Zach Gallen could be a very valuable young arm in a lot of rotations, especially the Cardinals. Zach Gallen feels like he's already wearing a Cardinals uniform, but what would stop the Diamondbacks from trading him?
It's tough. So what's funny about Zach Gallen is he's like one of those tweeners, right? You're a rebuilding team,
yeah,
and you have a guy that's kind of young, but also not super young.
Yeah.
And I think if he's pitching well, you trade. Absolutely. And we know they have the history there. Paul Goldschmidt dealt from the Diamondbacks over to the Cardinals. That's a high end option that I think could make a lot of sense. I wouldn't be shocked to see Gallen traded. I think that's an excellent name. And then maybe a Kyle Hendricks. Again, not a very exciting pitcher,
but the Cubs are going to do that.
The Cubs are going to fizzle. They're going to fizzle.
For it.
Yeah, they're going to fizzle.
Also, last Diamondback. I'm just thinking about gearing up for a playoff run, and the only name I can think about is Madison Bumgarner.
You think you could just capture some magic again in the playoffs?
No, I don't know, but I just feel like if the Diamondbacks are free falling and they do a fire sale, can Madison Bumgarner
Just
be
eat the
available
contract
for a team like the Cardinals? Possibly.
Maybe.
I don't know. It would cost zero.
No, zero. Absolutely. Like, and they probably wouldn't have to pay him much either. The Cardinals need to do something though. They absolutely need to address the pitching. And none of those guys are really sexy options. I'm sure there'll be some better names, but I like Zach Plesac as an option for the Cardinals. I think that's one that makes the most sense for me. And I could see that being a pretty good fit.
The only problem with the Cardinals is they're so reluctant to trade these three prospects. Jordan Walker, I understand, younger, and he just is unreal. But like, is Liberator really amazing? Is Nolan Gorman amazing that they're untradeable assets? I mean, and that's a question for you. This could end up hurting the Cardinals that they decided with this incredible offense with Nolan Arenado off to a really hot start. They have everything they could have, and they just decided, no, we're not trading Gorman or Liberator. Like, Liberator contribute this year? I don't think Gorman will. And are you on the side where it's like, yeah, these guys should be untradeable? Or are you like, come on, let's do something?
I'm not trading Walker. Liberator could help them this year, but if I could go get a better arm, I would trade him. I would trade Gorman, and Gorman looks good. He's been off to a phenomenal start this season, but you alluded to it here, right? Like, you already have a loaded infield. Are you keen on winning now or not? Nolan Gorman could be a really good bat. They're trying to put him at second base. You're really going to hold up. You're going to let a second baseman stop you from going out and getting a legitimate arm. Nolan Gorman could get you a legitimate arm. Nolan Gorman could be the starting piece to maybe even get you Frankie Montas. Like, if you go Gorman and throw in a Lars Nootbaar or some of the other guys, like, they could make that deal happen. And they probably won't, because as Katie Woo said of The Athletic when she came on the show, that they don't want to trade their top three guys. I think that's nuts. I love Gorman. I love what Gorman has done. I don't love him as a prospect. I love the improvements he's made. But even that aside, even if I loved him as a prospect, I'm not letting that guy stop me from getting pitching when I have a win now infield. Goldschmidt's not getting younger. Arenado's not getting younger. I mean, it's the last year of Yachty. It's the last year of Waino. It's the last year of Pujols. The outfield's young, but I mean, like, go for it. Let's go for it. You cannot win with that pitching. And I'm with you. Trade Gorman. I would do it in 2 seconds.
You have a runway to the NL Central because the Brewers have come out scuffling. The Cubs and the Reds probably won't be there at the end. And then we know what the Pirates will be.
They should be smelling the blood. Absolutely.
And yet they aren't. So we'll see at the trade deadline. Maybe they take a page out of our handbook and say, you know what? Maybe we should trade them. They won't, because they don't listen to this podcast and they don't care, but we think they should. But that doesn't matter. Question number 7, and this is second to last question. When does Roki Sasaki get posted, and who does he eventually sign with? Asked by @Chris_PR_13. I want to answer this really quick because I think this dude is maybe the best pitching prospect in the world right now. Roki Sasaki just threw a perfect game in the MPB at 20 years old.
Yeah.
And then in the following start, he threw another one, but just threw 8 innings. An incredible amount of strikeouts. He's reached as high as 102 miles an hour on the fastball. He has a 90-mile-an-hour splitter, and he can command multiple pitches at 20. Remember, this is the MPB that created Seiya Suzuki, that created Shohei Ohtani. Like, these guys are starting to come over now, and the MPB is a very good league. And this is a 20-year-old.
Best in the world, probably.
So, and the reason I say he's one of the best pitching prospects in the world, I ask you, Aram, would you rather have a 20-year-old Roki Sasaki, or would you rather have maybe a Shane Baz? Or would you rather have, Grayson? Or
I take Grayson over anybody.
But that's where this guy slots in. Because the fact that you even have to be like, oh, like, that's a question, and that's how good this guy is. The only problem is the second part of the question is, when does he eventually sign, and who does he sign with? We have no idea, because he most likely won't be posted for 3 to 4 years. But I was talking with our guy, Jack McMullen. You've heard of him.
Yeah.
And he said that when he comes over, he's going to get a larger contract than Masahiro Tanaka did when he signed that 7-year, $155-ish million deal with the Yankees. Like, we're looking at a 9-year, possibly a 10-year deal for a 23-year-old when he comes over. But right now he's 20. And in my opinion, from watching him, it's not a ton, but I'm like, this guy stacks up with some of the best pitching prospects in the world.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that 100%. I mean, most will there's the general belief is that the NPB is somewhere between high A and double A. So you imagine if a prospect's out there throwing back-to-back perfect games in high A and double A,
and a 20-year-old throwing 102.
Yeah, he sits 99. I think he's the top prospect in baseball, right? I would put him right there with G-Rod, Shane Baz. He's right in that conversation, absolutely. And that's just insane. That's absolutely insane. To average 99 on your fastball is nuts. The funny thing, too, his manager is Tadahito Iguchi. I don't know if you remember him in the big leagues. He was a big leaguer for a little bit. But I do wonder when he's going to come over because there's no urgency. I'm sure he's making good money in the NPB. Oh, yeah. They'll pay you 7 figures.
He's a star there.
And his family's there. I was actually reading a story on Yahoo, which they did a pretty good profile on him by Zach Kreiser. And unfortunately, Sasaki lost his father, I believe, in a tsunami. So like, I wonder just, what his family situation is. Like, that's a huge jump, dude. Like, to go at 20 years old, like we're imagine us going to college and we're like, holy crap, we're going to this new world. Imagine going to the other side of the world and being the focal point. So I wonder if there's a level of just like, hey, let's wait a couple years. I mean, me when I was 20 versus me now at 24 going on 25, a lot more skills than I had when I was 20 in terms of life and things like that. I don't know Roki Sasaki, but I would imagine that there's probably not that much urgency to get here. He knows the money's here. And look, he's extremely young. He can't even drink if he comes over here.
And the great part about it is we can dream on him for years now because he won't probably be coming for a couple of years. But when he does come, he's going to take the league by storm. Remember that name? You heard it on the Just Baseball show on 4/20 on 2022. You heard about Roki Sasaki. Last question. And this is a great one because I have a rotation that I want to throw at you that I think might now be the best. It's not the Brewers and it's not the Mets and it's not a rotation that we've really talked about at length. But the question is, who has the best rotation in MLB? Asked by @24MPACHECO. I didn't want to
24 M Pacheco.
M Pacheco. There we go. 24 M Pacheco. Who has the best rotation in MLB? I want to ask you or do you want to hear mine first?
I want to hear your pitch first, and then let's do it.
The San Francisco Giants might have the best rotation in baseball. And I'll tell you why. There's no rests. Number 1, Logan Webb, top 10 pitcher in baseball. Would you say so?
Yeah.
Where do you rank Carlos Rodon right now as after what you see from him?
Healthy Rodon is a top 20 pitcher.
Alex Wood is good.
Yeah, he's good. He's legit.
Alex Cobb is really good.
Cobb is also weirdly legit.
Anthony DeSclafani is really good too.
He's fine. He's fine.
Dude, these guys don't allow runs. The reason I bet on the Giants so much is because of that thought right there, that it's like these guys are fine veterans. No, they're all guys who are going to have an ERA under 4. They're probably all guys who are going to have an ERA under 3.8. Like,
I agree on all those except for
could win a Cy Young, and Carlos Rodon, when healthy, could win a Cy Young. This rotation from 1 to 5, we could talk about the Brewers, and I'll throw it to you, and you could probably say a couple of rotations you might think are better or top heavier. But oh my God, and first of all, they've allowed the least amount of runs scored in baseball at 20 so far. They're averaging 2 runs per game. They played 10 games, 20 runs allowed. This rotation is, if not 1, it might not be 1, but it's right there.
Yeah, so I love their rotation in terms of like the balance. Like you said, there's no days off. But I'm a little hesitant on DeSclafani. I think he's a fine like 4 or 5, but
that's what he is.
His command is strong. He throws a lot of sliders. He masks a bad fastball well. So I mean, like, that's fine for a back end of the rotation guy. The only concern I have is this: is Alex Cobb going to be good for the whole year, and is Carlos Rodon going to be healthy for the whole year? I think those are 2 fairly sizable question marks. The Brewers are already kind of giving you the question marks, and I think they're going to get out of it. Like Corbin Burns already was fine. I don't think either of us are worried about Freddie Peralta.
It was funny. Corbin Burns had one bad start. And we were like, oh, like maybe, but then he had 2 good runs. We're like, okay.
No, yeah, he's fine. But I do think this is a top 5 rotation in baseball. Absolutely. With the upside. I mean, if Rodon's healthy the whole year and Cobb is, pitching well, how is there a better rotation? I don't know if there is.
And the reason I brought this one up is because we've answered this question before. We've talked about how great the Brewers are. We've talked about how great the Mets are. But I wanted to bring the Giants up as a way